Radio councillors and gallery, we're good to go. So good evening one and all. On behalf of council, I recognise the traditional custodians of the land and pay tribute to elders past, present and emerging. As councillors of Ku-ring-gai Council, we should always be aware that the decisions we make affect the daily lives of those we represent. Let us all make these decisions with knowledge, goodwill and respecting the views of others. Before we start the formal proceedings, I would like to outline a few points regarding this evening's proceedings. Again, tonight's meeting will be live streamed on the council's website and only councillors and council staff will be shown on camera. The webcast of the meeting is available on council's website and the webcast commences once the mayor is seated and will cease if council goes into a confidential session where the public and press are excluded, pursuant to Section 10A of the Local Government Act. Council meetings remain open to the public as observers only, but in line with the Code of Meeting Practice, speakers will now address the council via the monthly public forums and not at council meetings. And for more information about addressing council, please visit our website. All present tonight must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the council's code of conduct, or making other potential defamatory statements. Councillors and council staff must declare and manage any conflicts of interest they may have in relation to any item of business that is the subject of the meeting agenda this evening. Apologies. Any councillor apologies? Everybody is here and online, so that's all good. General Manager, any staff apologies?
There are none, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Spencer.
Same declaration as I did at the forum. That's for GB 11, I believe, for the
Kissing Point Road
proposal of the 1364 to 1392 Pacific Highway and 1A, 3A Kissing Point Road. So one of the lot owners is a friend of mine and is known to the community as well as a number of councillors here. So there is no pecuniary or significant conflict for me to remain in chambers for GB 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Lennon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The gentleman to whom Councillor Spencer refers is also a long-standing family friend of mine, and thus, similarly for item GB 11, I have a non-pecuniary interest in the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Lennon. And you will be remaining in the chamber.
Thank you for the prompt, Mr Mayor. Yes, I will be.
Thank you.
With your approval.
Documents circulated. Any staff declarations, General Manager?
Mr Mayor and councillors, there is one, item NM1, aligning GM performance agreement practices with OLG guidelines. I'm declaring an interest in that matter and advise that myself and the staff will be leaving the chamber for consideration of that item.
Thank you, General Manager. Any other declarations?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. General Manager, documents circulated to councillors.
Mr Mayor and councillors, there are 4 memos, all from the same officer, the Manager, Urban and Heritage Planning. They relate as follows: GB 13, draft Roseville Public Domain Plan, post-site inspection. GB 12, draft Pymble Public Domain Plan, post-site inspection. GB 14, draft St Ives Public Domain Plan, post-site inspection. And GB 16, 8A, 14 and 16, Buckingham Road, Killara. Consideration of submissions exhibited, planning proposal and DCP, site inspection notes and additional recommendation.
Thank you, General Manager. And just to remind councillors, there is a change to GB 16, so when we come to that item. Rightio. Confirmation of reports to be considered in closed meeting.
Mr Mayor and councillors, there is item C1, which is the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee membership report and attachments 1 and 2, and item GB1, Linfield Village Hub, LVH recommendation to enter into exclusive negotiations with preferred proponent. Attachments only, attachments 1 through 7.
Thank you, and I seek a motion that those remaining confidential. Moved Councillor Smith, seconded Councillor Spencer. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Councillors, we move to confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, and I seek somebody to move those minutes. Moved Councillor Smith, seconded Councillor Lennon. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Minutes of the Mayor, we have one this evening, councillors, which is in regards to the most recent Australia Day Honours and Citizen of the Year Awards. I am pleased to inform you that 6 Ku-ring-gai citizens, through their outstanding achievements and services to the community, have been awarded 2023 Australia Day Honours. We are very proud to have these dedicated and talented Australians as members of the Ku-ring-gai community. I would like to read to you the names of these special Ku-ring-gai citizens and, on behalf of Council, congratulate them on their excellent contributions to the Australian society. Mr. Glenn Lloyd Ball, OAM of St Ives, for service to the community through a range of roles. Dr. Raymond John Cook, OAM of Roseville, for service to medicine as a neurosurgeon. Emeritus Professor Peter Hayden Curzon, Honorary, OAM of Pymble, for service to tertiary education. The late Mr. Christopher Davis, AM of Turramurra, for significant service to water management. Mr. Roger Allen Foy, OAM of South Turramurra, for service to the automotive history. Mr. Marshall Frederick Rosen, OAM of Roseville Chase, for service to cricket. I also congratulate Ku-ring-gai Citizen of the Year winners for 2023. Citizen of the Year, Tony Pang. Young Citizen of the Year, Justin Ching. Environmental Citizen of the Year, Arden Licaralde. Mayor's Award for an outstanding contribution by a community group, the St Ives Lifestyle Disability Support Team. On behalf of Council, I congratulate all these award winners on their outstanding achievements. Ku-ring-gai should be proud that it has citizens being recognised at the highest level for their selfless dedication, commitment and contribution to local, national and various communities. I move that A, the Council acknowledge the outstanding contribution made by these recipients of the 2023 Australia Day Honours to the Ku-ring-gai community and to the well-being of our society. B, that the Mayor write to the recipients on behalf of Council to congratulate them on receiving their award, including a copy of this mayoral minute. Councillors, are there anyone that wishes to speak? Councillor Spencer.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to echo your the words that you have used so eloquently to describe the recipients of all the awards. I share the same. I would like to speak in particular to the Citizen of the Year award winner, Mr. Tony Pang. I've had the honor and privilege to know Tony as a personal friend, a family friend, and spent a number of years, probably over 10 years, working with Tony in the community. And I know that he has spent a good number of years of his life dedicating to community work, including the Chinese Australian Forum and the CAS, which is the Chinese Australian Social Services. For over the last 10 years, Tony has been not just a friend, but also a good mentor, and I've worked with him and learned quite a number of things about the Chinese community in Ku-ring-gai, and not just in Ku-ring-gai, in Australia as well. And I know that the Chinese community namely CAF. They work very closely with the Jewish community, especially when there was an issue at the federal government in relation to, was it 16C? I think it was 16C. I can't remember. But anyway, they worked very closely together with the Lebanese Muslim community as well, to rally against that legislation. So Tony is a very giving person. He gives and he asks for nothing in return. He rings me all the time, telling me this and that. We have coffee here and there, mostly at Hornsby. And I'm really proud that he has received this Citizen of the Year award. It's truly well deserved, and I congratulate him, and I thank Ku-ring-gai Council for honoring his commitment to community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Any other councillors that wish to speak to this? There being none, I'm happy to move that mayoral minute. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Councillors' petitions, we have one this evening. And would any councillor wish to move this PT1, which is in regards to Finchley and Burns Road, Turramurra? I'm happy to move that petition, which is a petition to the various traffic issues around Finchley and Burns Road, and we have 14 signatures. And I seek a seconder for that. Seconded, Councillor Spencer. And the recommendation is that the petition be received and referred to the appropriate officer of council for attention. All those in favour? That is unanimous. I invite any councillors to nominate any items on the agenda that they wish to have a site inspection. No site inspections. Councillors, before we move into the GB items, I would seek a motion to suspend standing orders to rejig the process, whereby we bring forward GB 11 as the first item, and also to move NM1 to the end of the business paper, which means literally at the end, which means after the inspections, after the confidential items. And that is seconded by Councillor Wheatley to suspend standing orders. All those in favour? That is unanimous. I invite councillors to nominate any item on the agenda that they wish to adopt in accordance with the officer's recommendation, allowing for minor changes without debate. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. With the suspension of orders, the first item on the agenda would be GB 11.
So GB 11 moved by Councillor Spencer
Officer's recommendation.
and seconded by Councillor Wheatley. All those in favour? That is unanimous. So if you're here for GB 11, that has now been passed, so you need not hang around for the rest of the meeting unless you so desire to do so. Councillor Spencer.
GB 2, officer's recommendation.
Moved Councillor Spencer, seconded Councillor Wheatley. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB 3,
Moved by Councillor Spencer,
officer's recommendation.
seconded by Councillor Kay. All those in favour?
I think I might note that I have left GB 1
I
for
think
debate.
yep, that's fine. That is carried, GB3.
I think there are people here that would like to listen to the debate.
That's okay.
GB 4, officer's recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Spencer, seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
GB5, all officers' recommendation.
Moved by councillor Spencer, seconded by councillor Lennon. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
GB6, officers' recommendation.
Moved by councillor Spencer, seconded by councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous. We just have a little bit of a lag with councillor Ward being online.
Right.
Continue on.
I was just wondering, because of the lag, the time difference, sorry, because I know Councillor Ward is dialing in from Fiji. Time difference is about 10 years, I think.
What do you mean?
Oh, she heard. Okay.
Let's focus back on the
My-
business at hand, councillor
Thank
Spencer.
you. Might I then move in a block GB 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, but not 18? How's that for?
Efficiency, seconded by councillor Wheatley. All those in favour?
Can we just say which ones those are again? I don't want to
Be
vote.
GB 7, GB 8, GB 9, GB 10, 12, because we've done GB 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16.
And
Oh, I mean, he's had to go through one by one. There's a time lag there too. 17,
17.
is that good?
And if you wish to add,
And I'll leave GB 18.
would you care to add C1 to that?
Yes, C1 as well.
Councillors, crystal clear? Moved by councillor Wheatley. All those in favour?
So we got to wait, right?
Councillor Ward? Thank you. That's unanimous.
Wow. She's like talking from
Sorry,
space.
Mr. Mayor, I was waiting madly, but it's just a bit of a time lag. There's a little bit of a sort of a storm here at the moment as well, so that's interfering. So I apologise for that.
It's like we're talking to an astronaut.
Thank you, councillor Spencer. That takes us back to GB1. That leaves us back to GB1. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
So that's moved by councillor Taylor, seconded by councillor Greg Taylor.
And I would like to reserve my right to speak to it. Thanks.
Councillor Greg Taylor.
Likewise.
Thank you. Councillors, anybody wish to speak to that else to this one at this point in time? Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wait, just to confirm, I just saw something with B and C crossed out. Is that what we're going for?
No. We actually haven't. Nothing's been moved yet.
Oh, nothing's been moved.
No, apart from the
As
officer's
in
recommendation.
Officer's recommendation. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak in favour of the officer's recommendation, and I'll try to be brief. What we have here, planned for the Linfield Village Hub, is a fantastic set of facilities which will bring great benefit to the residents of Linfield and the surrounding neighbourhood. I also sincerely believe that if we can get the Linfield Village Hub started, that we will subsequently have opportunities to deliver similar projects elsewhere, such as in Gordon, possibly in Turramurra, possibly in St Ives, but there will be the opportunity, if we get started on this, to bring similar benefits to other parts of Ku-ring-gai as well. Now, what does this village hub encompass? It involves a new library, one that is much bigger and much more supportive of the current and future needs of the residents near Linfield. It includes new community facilities, which, once again, are much larger and much more supportive of the current and the future residents of the nearby suburbs. It involves a new parkland and new open green space plus a playground, which would be greatly appreciated by residents of the immediate area, especially those who have been shouting out to have a playground nearby. And it also includes some additional retail that would benefit the residents here in Linfield. But another big thing is it includes 135 commuter parking spaces, mostly funded by the state government. And these commuter parking spaces are desperately needed in the area. Just last year, we delivered, in conjunction with the state government, 105 commuter parking spaces on the other side of the highway. And now, if you go there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those 105 commuter parking spaces are already full once you're there at 10 or 11 a.m. So an additional 135 commuter parking spaces, sure, why not? Now, some residents have talked about the 11 years that it's taken to get here, and I share some of those frustrations. Look, if this land was privately owned in the private sector, perhaps the project would have been delivered already. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we are talking about the local government sector here. And in local government, there are certain rules or certain laws that prohibit us from just making a deal with one individual developer. Section 55 of the Local Government Act requires us to go to tender on projects such as this. Council can't just, have some backdoor conversations and then sign up with one particular contractor. There are technicalities, but at a high level, that's what it is. So it's taken us a number of years, plus some delays such as COVID, to get to this point where we have addressed all probity concerns, we've tendered properly, we've got to a point where there's been a number of proponents who have expressed interest, and I believe now is the best time to progress. Now is the best time to progress with this project, because I think if we delay any longer, well, we lose opportunity by June if we don't settle on something. And as you know, interest rates have gone up quite significantly since the time when these offers were first put to us. The real estate market has softened, the economy has somewhat sort of flatlined or even tanked. I'm not sure that if we delay any further, whether we will get another deal like this, or whether it will cost us more as a council. The only way I can see it being built, if we do not make a decision now, is it will be built with additional density in the future. It might be 12, it might be 15 stories in the future, but that future won't be this term of council, it won't be next term of council, it'll be next decade at least. So I just encourage everyone here to support the officer's recommendation. I believe it's the best course of action we have. And also finally, with regard to the future sales of the current library site, I believe that not all of that funding will end up being required to support the construction of the hub. There will be plenty to go around for other parts of Ku-ring-gai. So support this recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Ward, you're next up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nye has pretty much summed up very well what I had in mind to say. All I want to add to that is that this has been in the process for 10 years, and it's a long, long time to be able to deliver something to the community. The appetite's there. There's been a lot of to and fro. We've reached a stage where everybody appears to be happy with what we want to build. This sort of building, this sort of facility happens all around the country with residential up the top, community facilities, coffee shops, car parks, etc. I see this as a great thing for the community and indeed for our municipality. I also recommend this to all the councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Kay.
I've just got a question. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the relevant director, which I believe is Director Marshall of Corporate. Director Marshall, what is the reputational risk of not proceeding with this project? To Ku-ring-gai Council.
I'm quite happy to answer that. It's speculation. It's almost impossible to quantify.
Okay, thank you.
I'm quite happy to put up an amendment. Staff have that. All right, councillors, so basically this amendment is points A and B, and point C is that the proceeds from the future sale of the existing library site will not be quarantined and dedicated to the Linfield Village Hub project. And I seek a seconder for that. Seconded by Councillor Smith. Councillors, since this project was conceived back in 2012, we were basically going to redevelop one site, sell it off, and get a new hub. That ran for 8 years. In 2020, Council changed the direction for funding, i.e. throw in the library site, and that the proceeds from that are then used to build the hub. We are now selling 2 assets to build one. This was never the game plan that we went out to the community with. All right. If councillors believe that the current offers for the hub being built are good, sound, financially responsible, then why do we need the hub? Okay? Surely we don't need the hub then, do we? The whole premise that this project was going ahead was not to throw other assets into this site to fund it. So, if councillors are comfortable with the information presented to them, is it a good deal? Or do we desperately need another asset to be sold to fund the project? That's up to you to decide. So if you feel it's a good deal with what you've been given, then you don't need the hub. Then you don't need the hub to have the library sale. If you think the financials are not sound, are not good, that you've been given in briefings, then state it. This is the time to say the financials aren't that crash hot. We need to sell more assets. Okay, this is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This is a time to state your position. As we know, this is putting a large asset from the library side. Anybody can speculate how much it's worth. 40, 50, 60 million dollars, who knows? Into the hub. That means the hub project by itself is not self-funding. The whole premise that we went out to the community is that we would build a hub that is self-funding. Whether it was 7 stories, 9 stories, 14 stories, whatever number we landed on, that it would be self-funding. Right? That's fairly crystal clear. I'll leave it to that. Councillor Smith as seconder.
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I do agree with you that this is actually simple and straightforward. It feels to me absolutely intuitive that when you replace an old library with a new library, that the proceeds from the old library should go towards the new library. We don't get libraries out of thin air. We can't magically create money. It makes sense to use an old library, the sale of the old library, to pay for the new one. We have a history of doing this in Ku-ring-gai. So we sold the old depot to fund the new depot. We have sold other assets tied to other assets. If these two assets were co-located, we would not even be talking about this. But the old library is in a terrible, terrible location. It is too small and it's crammed between the highway and the railway line. We need a new library. It's not just a library, by the way, it's a community centre. Seniors go there, teenagers study there, business people work there, community groups work there and gather there. We offer services there. It's a channel for us to communicate through. We need this thing, and it makes perfect sense. It is intuitive that we would use the funds from the old library to fund the new library. In addition to that, we are using the funds from the library as a contingency, just a contingency, to make sure that when we build this new Linfield Village Hub, that if there is any expansion in cost, we are covered and we are comfortable. Some of the remaining funds relieved from the sale of the library are intended to fund future operational costs. So there will be an uplift in future operational costs with the new site, as it will obviously be a lot bigger and better than the old site. But I think it is intuitive and obvious to everyone that when you're replacing a library, it makes sense to use the funds from the old library to support the new one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got a few questions at this point because this alternate motion is a bit of a surprise to me. So from the wording of point C, when we're saying it will not be quarantined and dedicated, are we therefore saying that 0% of the value of the existing Linfield Library will go towards the Linfield Village Hub? Or are we saying that there's a bit of flexibility that we'll figure out later?
Quite easy to answer that one, Councillor Nye. Quarantine means that not 100% is going from the old library site into the hub.
Okay, so to confirm, that could mean 20% if that was needed.
Whatever percentage councillors so land on, yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. Second question is, and I've always disagreed on this, but what's the definition of self-funding? Does self-funding cover future operational expenses? And does self-funding cover future depreciation expenses? Because normally, from my understanding in local government, these are funded by rates.
Director Marshall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, self-funding is as you define it, and throughout the project we defined it to cover the capital costs as well as the operational costs.
Okay, thank you. Third question. Let's say this does go ahead, points A, B, and C, and I do see some merit in it. I just haven't made up my mind. What would happen if we get to a point where we decide, or a future council, or whoever decides not to build the hub? What happens to the old library site? Are we ever going to be in a position where we sell the old library without having built a new library?
I think I might be able to answer that, and if staff might wish to correct me, we have a standing resolution that the library will not be sold until a new one is built. So if we don't build the hub, the library remains where it is.
All right. So that does mean that the timing of the future potential library sale, current site, it might be 2025, 26, but it might be a lot later, just depending on how things play out. Correct? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Greg Taylor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the relevant director, would point C hinder the progress of Linfield Village Hub in any way?
Director? Marshall?
Mr. Mayor, I think if point C was adopted by council, there would be another report coming back from officers to seek a way to fund the money that would otherwise have been sourced from the library. So there's a funding gap if this was to proceed. So council would be proceeding without identifying how it will fund a significant part of the project.
Director Marshall, would that be more appropriate at that particular point in time when we know what our funding gap is, to get that report, rather than just proceeding on as is and not knowing what our funding gap is?
Mr. Mayor, in the confidential attachments, the funding gap is identified.
And that's at the current high level of documentation and information, as opposed to at a detailed design level.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. So at this point in time, we know what the financials look like, and that tells us that we need to use the funding from the future sale of the Linfield Library.
General Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I think further to that, I think what you're trying to say is that, and this would happen in any case, that once we have exhausted point A, which is the ongoing exclusive negotiations, we would then come back with a revised funding gap or no funding gap at all, depending on what happens in that process. Too early to speculate yet, but yes, that would certainly be done.
Thank you, General Manager. I've just got a quick question to Councillor Alec Taylor. You mentioned that we sell assets like for like. If we're selling the library site, then why aren't we building a new library on that particular site? Why are we selling the other site?
For a great reason. So the library, as I'm sure you're aware, is in a terrible location. It's small and stuck between the highway and the train line, as I mentioned earlier. It's hard to get to. And as the state government has identified in 2 separate recent reports, it is grossly undersized. It is incredibly undercooked in terms of the services that it provides our community. It needs to be bigger. We need a new one.
That wasn't quite the question. Why aren't we replacing like for like what we did with Carlotta Street and the depot?
I believe we are. We're getting a new library for the old library. The new library is not exactly like, the new library, the new depot is not exactly like the old depot, and the new library will not be exactly like the old library.
Correct. But your whole, and again, why aren't we building the library on the same site? Your whole premise and your whole argument was based on the council depot, we redevelop it on the same site. So in this,
No, I never said that we should develop it on the same site. In fact, Mr. Mayor, with respect, I said that it shouldn't be on the same site because the current site is terrible. What I said was that if it was on the same site, then we wouldn't be having this debate about whether or not the funds for the old library should be allocated to the new library. That's actually what I said. If they were co-located, we wouldn't be having this debate. But unfortunately, it's in a terrible location. It's in a truly horrendous location. And the state government thinks we need a much better one, a much more accessible one. And that's why we're looking at moving it to the hub. And it's entirely appropriate when we're replacing one old asset with a new one that we should use the funds from that old asset to fund the new asset.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, my question to, I think, well, to the appropriate director. In the confidential papers, we have two case scenarios. One is the realistic case of X number of deficit, and then the pessimistic case of X number of deficit. In those attachments also, we do have that the proponent goes on to say that once this building is built, they may be, or they definitely will be, selling those property a lot more per square metre than they have built into this revenue stream. So my question is, number one, have we accounted for the same as we have done, the realistic case scenario for income coming in and the pessimistic case scenario for the income coming in? Wouldn't that be then that we would actually end up getting more money from the proponent that we may go with?
Who's going to speculate on that?
It's in the confidential papers.
Councillor Ward, that's probably detailed out in confidential.
Yeah, that's why I'm not mentioning any numbers. I'm just saying we are talking about our positions and the lack of funding. So
Okay,
I'm just talking about, well, there is a revenue stream.
What's the question?
Have we accounted for that?
Can you put a succinct question?
That there is a realistic, pessimistic approaches to this particular thing. There is also in that paper that there may be more revenue coming in through that proponent. Have we accounted for that, therefore offsetting that we may not have a deficit, or it may be a cost neutral, or we may be in a better position to build this? This is forecasting, this is talking to the proponents, this is in the
Thank you,
papers.
Councillor Ward. I think
I'm
we've
just
understood
asking
where
a
you're going
question.
with that.
I'm just asking.
Director Marshall, can you speculate on the values?
Mr. Mayor, I can't talk about values, but the confidential attachment does point out to councillors potential upside. So yes, that is taken into account.
Thank you, Director Marshall.
Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the relevant officer. In the event that this goes ahead, what is the likely impact on the timeline and risk of progress of the Linfield Village Hub project?
Andrew, do you want to answer that one, Andrew? Director Marshall, is there any... You understood the question from Councillor Taylor? I think the question was, is there any difference between the officer's recommendation and this as far as timing is concerned?
I beg your pardon, Mr. Mayor, no. So what I'm getting at is, does this put the project in jeopardy? Does this increase the probability of failure of the project to jeopardise the funding for the project in this way? Are we creating more risk of failure for this project by delinking the sale of the old library for the new library.
Director?
Mr. Mayor, I think in my previous answer, I gave the view that without the library, we don't have adequate funding. So it will be up to council whether it is willing to proceed on that basis.
Councillor Nye?
Thank you. Question through to the mayor or whoever's relevant director. If this were to proceed and then we decide at a later point in the next few months that there's a gap of X, will there be the opportunity for this council to consider whether or not X should be allocated, should be coming from the potential sale of the existing library?
Director Marshall? General Manager?
Mr Mayor and Councillors, I think I alluded to that point earlier, and I think it goes on from the question that Councillor Knight previously asked about what percentage, if any, of the proceeds of the library might end up going towards this project. So once we've concluded negotiations or exhausted negotiations, if the amendment got up in accordance with point A, we would come back to Council and say, this is now the gap. What do you want to do? Do you want to proceed? If so, how do you want to fund it? Do you want to proceed with some funding? That's totally a question for Council. That's not something I can answer, but the Mayor's already said tonight that it's the spirit of the amendment is that not 100% of the proceeds would go to the project, but Council would have to decide, is that 10%, is it 50%? I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. I'd like to speak in support of this this amendment.
Thank you.
Now. And I know it is at the anger of some potential anger of some of the councillors on this floor. Now, why I support this although I wish I had known about this before the meeting, points A and B remain unchanged. It is largely the council officer's recommendation. We will continue negotiating with proponent A. It's not just the general manager negotiating, it is general manager delegating it to other staff as well as a team to negotiate with proponent A. So we will form a clearer picture of where we are heading. With point C, I'm generally comfortable with that. I think, well, there's two reasons for this. One, we still have the opportunity later on in the next few months to decide whether, point C is 0% of the library, 50% of the library, 99%, whatever. It's not a discussion that we necessarily need to have right now. So I'm comfortable with waiting to see more details firm up with point A and B before agreeing to point C. Agreeing to an exact percentage. And one other thing which, look, I personally have a disagreement with maybe other people is I don't think we necessarily need the sale of an asset to fund fully the operational costs of some facilities. That really is just potentially a short-term measure. At some point, after you drain all the asset sales, you're going to have to meet the full operational cost of a facility without the asset sales in 20, 30 years' time. So, look, I do believe that there will be other opportunities for this council to fund those operational costs in the future, whether it be from increased rates or increased population or developer contributions somehow. I'm sure there will be other ways in the future, and I'm open to the idea of potential library sale only happening if the hub is built and having some of those benefits go across to other needy projects across Ku-ring-gai. Finally, I'd like to comment that, look, we also need to get beyond this view of big projects only. There's lots of little things that we could deliver. If we spent $300,000 in a certain spot in Linfield, traffic would be so much better and residents would be so much happier. But we need to think about those tiny little bits here and there that we could be doing potentially from asset sales as well. So anyway, I'd like to support this amendment. Points A and B are good. Point C was unexpected, but there's opportunity to negotiate that in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nye. Any other speakers to this amendment? Councillor Taylor, you have a question?
As the mover of the original motion, do I have the right to sum up?
Once we get there, yes. Councillor Ward, you have a question?
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question before I come to your amended motion. Have we previously sold assets to fund operational costs of the council?
Director Marshall?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor. I might add, if I may, the idea is not to sell an asset and just withdraw the balance until it's all gone. The idea is that it would be invested into an income-producing asset that would fund the operational costs.
Nevertheless, you are selling an asset and you are yielding interest on that will go towards operational.
Is that a question, Councillor Ward?
Is that what we're doing? Yeah, is that what we're doing? Just help me, please, here, Ms. Director Marshall.
Can you actually frame a question, please?
Yeah. My question was that does that mean we are investing those funds, whatever the funds is, from the capital asset, so that we can fund operational costs? Is that correct? My understanding is correct?
Director Marshall?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you, Director Marshall. Mr. Mayor, your amended motion is that A and B is pretty much what we have there, and it is C that has changed.
Councillor Ward, you've already spoken to it, so you have to ask a question.
Oh, okay. I haven't spoken to your amendment.
Okay, you're speaking to the amendment?
I haven't spoken to the amendment.
Okay, you can speak to the amendment.
Yeah. Thank you. The answer to know is, do we have a time frame on when this comes back to the council?
Mr. Mayor and councillors, no definitive time frame. It would depend on the speed and the success or otherwise of the negotiations. But certainly I would say a number of months.
Councillor Greg Taylor.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the relevant director. Can we amend point C to include a guarantee that a portion of the sale of the old library will go to the new Linfield Village Hub site, so that we can proceed with the Linfield Village Hub project without any delay, and then whatever the surplus is from the sale of the Linfield Library, that can be put towards anything else. Is there any way that we can make that amendment?
General Manager.
Well, my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, it's your amendment, but I would just say that the entire proceeds from the future sale will not be quarantined.
So that's just an additional word, the entire proceeds? That should cover that?
Can we add but required funding? Or something like that, so not entire, but the required funding from the sale go towards Linfield Village Hub. Just to guarantee that the Linfield Village Hub project proceeds, and we don't have to delay, and we don't have to use all the money from the existing library of the sale to be locked into this project. If there is a surplus, we can use it on other assets.
At this point in time, we don't know the gap of what it is until we
I
get the
understand
report.
that. I mean, there might not even be a gap. So then that's why we need to guarantee that the funding that is needed from the existing library sale will go to the Linfield Village Hub.
Sorry, point of order, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Spencer?
That is the officer's recommendation. So you're putting up an amendment, right? So to quarantine is what he's suggesting.
I don't believe that that's the case. Because the officer's recommendation is that all of the money from the Linfield Village Hub library goes towards the new Linfield Village Hub project. And so we're trying to, if there's a surplus of asset funding from the sale of the existing library, then that can go to other assets. And so that's not defined in the officer's recommendation, as far as I understand it.
No, you are correct. With the officer's original recommendation, where the entire proceeds were going into the village hub, there was no money going anywhere else. This one allows whatever percentage or whatever proportion councillors desire to go to the hub and to put it elsewhere as they so desire. So it gives you that flexibility. And once we know further down the track the quantum of the shortfall, we will make that decision, and then we can allocate the balance elsewhere.
Well, can we do that just right now? I mean, Director Marshall said before that we wouldn't have a contingency for this project without the sale of the library. But if we use enough of the fundings from the sale of the library to go as contingency for the Linfield Village Hub project and put that in point C, then we can proceed with the project. And then whatever surplus there is from the sale of the library, that can go to other assets.
General Manager?
Mr Mayor and councillors, could I suggest, I mean, this is intertwined with questions raised by Councillor Nye, by Councillor Ward. So at the moment, the library sale is entwined in funding this project, but as Councillor Ward's question just said, the leftovers would be invested to fund future operating costs of the facility. We haven't decided on what percentage we may be able to allocate to the project. I would suggest that when we come back after we've undertaken point A, then we would have to raise all of those issues in the report and flesh them out properly. That's massive money to just be fundamentally doing an alternate path on the spur of the moment tonight. There'll be plenty of time for that when we come back and we can see what the shortfall, there mightn't be a shortfall, there might need to be a conversation. So that's my view.
Thank you.
Councillor Alec Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question through you to the relevant officer. Does this change in funding and the extra work required to work and discover what may need to happen to fill any funding gap have any impact on our ability to hit the deadline for the expiry of the current bids?
Mr Douglas, I think that might be directed at you to answer.
So I think the question is, with this proposal to slightly revise the funding arrangement, does that have any negative impact on the negotiation, the exclusive negotiation of the bids before the validity period expires? And I don't think it does, but we do have limited time anyway, and we certainly need to make a decision quickly if we're going to go into exclusive negotiations, because otherwise we won't come to a conclusion on those before the validity period expires.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Spencer?
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't intending to speak to this agenda, However, I've heard both sides speak on Amendment C. So, and I do agree with Councillor Taylor that if there is, yeah, Taylor, no, and I also agree with the mayor that we do not know how much the sale of the library site would be. We were just speculating, but there is common ground between all sides that A and B is accepted, and that this project is to go ahead, which is a very positive move. Now, may I propose a bit of a wording change? I'm not proposing a foreshadow or anything. So we can't quarantine the entire amount from the entire proceed from the sale of the library just to put on the Linfield Hub, because it has to go around, and we may not require all of it. Who knows? We may sell it for $90 million, is what the other Councillor Taylor suggested. In passing. During the briefing, I mean, we might inherit something. We don't know how much. It's not a fact. I'm just. Now, may I then say that? How about C guarantees that any shortfall be drawn upon from that sale of the library? So it could be 5 million, could be 10 million. So basically, the sale of the library is to guarantee the hub, not the entire proceed. Am I making sense? Am I making sense, Mr. Taylor, Councillor Taylor?
Yes, yeah. To me, that's what I was trying to reiterate as well.
So if we can somehow use the library site to guarantee the development of the site, who knows, we might sell it for 90 million. Then we can build a basketball court and a casino. Yeah, Councillor Barbara just came on, and she just reminded me that we may not need to draw upon any proceed from the sale of the library site, because if we can have a surplus from the hub.
General Manager?
I think I understand what Councillor Spencer's trying to say. So if I'm right, it would be that required proceeds from the future sale of the existing Linfield Library will be quarantined and dedicated to the Linfield Village Hub project.
Sorry, might I just add that that doesn't mean that, number one, you can go soft on the proponent.
No, we
You're
won't
going
be,
to
Councillor
sharpen the
Spencer.
pencil.
General Manager, with the way this is written, what happens to the balance of the funds?
Mr Mayor and Councillors, that would be subject to the report back to Council. But at the moment, as I said, those funds are tied to investing to cover the future operating costs. Council at any point could decide not to do that. They could decide to do other things with those funds, but that would have to be a decision when the report comes back following negotiations.
Does that give you an answer on
Yes,
what
I
might or
was
might
just,
not happen with the balance?
Joking with Councillor Kay that it should sit in my account until it's decided.
Councillor Smith, I might get you to comment before whether we accept or reject.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ooh. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe through to Director Marsh, or seriously, is it really required to be putting this in place now? It's something giving us a room to move optional, whereas this is purely, it's almost we're back to where we were at square one. Like, do we really need, what I'm asking on point C, do we need this latest change the Councillor Spencer put in place to move forward with everything that we're doing? I just don't see the need for it myself.
Director Marshall, any comments to that?
Mr. Mayor, at some point, Council will need to identify all of the funding required. In the confidential attachment, we have estimated what that is. So whether it's now or whether it's later, we'll have to identify the funding. If we don't identify it now and we continue to spend money and change our mind later, that might incur unnecessary costs. So that is one of the risks. So my advice would be, I would recommend that we do identify the funding now, and that latest version would do that.
I'll just sit off for a sec, thank you.
Councillor Smith, do you wish to incorporate that, or do you wish to have the previous wording which we had up?
Mr. Mayor, I was actually more comfortable with the previous wording. I feel as though it will allow us to look at other options and so forth. I think this is very much almost tying us back into what we had before we even proposed this.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm pretty much of the similar mindset. So, Councillor Spencer, if you wanted to go that,
Keep the language, Chris.
Can I foreshadow?
you can just say you have foreshadowed an amendment.
So just if they can just save the wording, who knows?
Councillor Greg Taylor.
My question was to confirm that the old C, so maybe that question doesn't apply anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Nye.
Oh, a question, right. My question is, is there theoretically an opportunity for councillors, a future council, to change the way operating costs are funded? So we may theoretically say, oh, it'll come from the sale of the library now, but it may well be that in 4 years' time, a future council might decide it comes from population growth or from SRV. Is there a possibility of that sort of thing happening?
General Manager.
So councillors could say at any time that the project has to be self-funding on a capital basis only. That's always been open to the council, but it's always been clear in the entirety of this project that it meant capital plus future operating expenses. But yes, that could be changed.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Greg Taylor.
So now we're back to us not having the funding. If this amendment is to pass, now we're back to not having the funding secured for this project to proceed. Is that correct?
No, that would change. That's the second version. There was a word change. will be.
There we go. So I'm a little bit confused now. If I can just confirm all of this for everybody. So if this is to pass, we can continue with the project and we have a contingency for this project secured.
The entire proceeds would not be quarantined. Will not be quarantined. We're just adjusting the wording.
So can I reiterate the same question? So this is slightly different to our original amendment because it has the word entire in it. So this now,
Correct.
This now means that we're using what funding we need from the existing library sale. That if we need a contingency, that will go towards the Linfield Village Hub project, and whatever is not needed will be the surplus to do with whatever we want. So my original question to Director Marshall was that the original point C would mean that we have a big financial gap in the funding for this project, but with the word entire, now we can proceed with this project because the funding from the existing Linfield Library will go to the Linfield Hub project. Is that correct?
Director Marshall?
Councillor, the way it's written does not say how much will be dedicated to the project. It says that the entire proceeds will not be. So it's up in the air how much would be actually dedicated to the project.
Whatever quantum it is.
So in my view, it doesn't actually say that at the moment. It's unclear as to how much would be dedicated. It just says that the entire proceeds will not be.
So does that mean that we could use none and then that we wouldn't be able to continue with the project?
Well, I guess that would be subject to a future decision.
Yes.
Okay, so if we wanted from this meeting to proceed with the Linfield Village Hub project, this isn't the amendment that would do that.
Director Marshall, I think we're...
Mr Mayor, the council can continue with this version. It's just that the entire funding is not resolved at the moment if you continue with this version. So there would have to be future decisions that settle the entire funding.
Can I ask the benefits of this? Why would we want to wait down the track to find out more about the finances?
General Manager?
Mr Mayor and Councillors, as I said earlier, this isn't the staff recommendation. This is a councillor amendment on the floor of council. As I said earlier, and it goes back to the question that Councillor Nye asked the Mayor about, well, what percentage? And we said that would have to be discussed when the report comes back following the negotiations in A, and councillors would have to, as a collective, make a decision about what quantum of funds they're willing to put towards the project from the library.
Thank you.
Councillor Lennon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to Director Marshall. Just to pick up on what you said earlier, you confirmed quite rightly that council does not apply the sale of assets to operating costs. You said the contemplation here, shall we say, was that we might sell the Linfield Library site and invest the proceeds, and then use the proceeds of the investment to fund operations. Was that what you said?
Mr Mayor, yes, that is what I said. It may not be the entire proceed.
No, but
Some of it-
portion thereof.
Some portion, yes.
Is that something we've done before?
Not that I'm aware of, although the building next door, 828 Pacific Highway, is heading that way because it wasn't originally purchased as an investment, but it has turned out that way, and it returns significant revenue that at the moment is repaying a debt. But once that debt is repaid, it could be used to fund operations.
Well, then it becomes an income-earning asset, but the intention at the time was not to, well, that was actually a purchase rather than a sale. So in this particular case, it makes perfectly good financial sense, does it not? Never to sell an asset to fund operating costs. Why would it make sense to sell an asset to invest to fund operating costs?
Director? General Manager.
I think there is a distinct difference, Councillor Lennon. If you have a one-off sale of an asset to pump into recurrent costs or maintenance, whatever the case may be, you got it once and it's gone. In this case, you've got a recurrent income stream from investment income. It's not a one-off. It goes on and rolls on year after year.
Capital grows.
A second question, if I may. Can I please confirm, when we talk about the Linfield Library site, does that include the kids, the Ku-ring-gai Youth Development Service offices? Does it include the Senior Citizens Centre? Does it include all the property there? Now, is it contemplated that all of those community services would be incorporated, should it proceed, in the new Linfield Village Hub?
Director Watson, you might want to have words of wisdom on this one. Is kids, etc., meant to be going into the hub?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is accommodation made for all of those functions to transfer across. Whether council wants to transfer them all across is a matter that council would deliberate at a future point in time. But there is certainly accommodation for all of the community facilities should council wish to continue with those community facilities. There are other functions on the site that would not continue. Some of the recreation and some of the accommodation. The accommodation is replaced by other accommodation.
Sorry, I missed that last part.
The accommodation, there's the old, it used to be the old Copwa facility. I think there's 13 units on site. They're probably definable as affordable housing, I suppose. That function wouldn't be replicated over in the new hub.
So there will be a diminution in community assets. So it's not really like for like. If everything that is currently there now at the Linfield Library site is not in the hub, is it fair to say that this is not transferring everything across?
I said the community facilities. I mean, the accommodation is not a community facility yet. And the tennis courts were never meant to be replaced either. So there are some functions that do not go across. But when you talk about the facilities you originally asked about, the library, the senior centre and kids, there is accommodation for that should council want to move those facilities across, and that decision hasn't been made yet.
Now, what I was trying to understand whether it would make sense to have a surplus, as this amendment contemplates, given that there's some functions, whether they're community services or not, but some functions that do not become part of the hub.
And that was always known, Councillor Lynn.
Oh no, I just simply wanted to clarify for the purposes of this amendment. Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a clarifying question. In a hypothetical world where this amendment succeeds, compared to a hypothetical world where the original motion succeeds, is it true that both of them bring us to the same point, which is we negotiate with proponent A, something comes to us, and at that point in time, we could, as a council, make up a completely different decision about what to do with the library? Yeah. So is it basically the same thing?
Yes, it is, Councillor Nye.
Yeah,
At that
right.
particular point in time, council can decide what they want to do once A and B are done.
Yep, confirmed my thoughts. Thank you.
Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My light is on just to sum up. So
If there are no further...
He'll have to sum up in the amendment that we put.
Councillor Taylor, do you wish to sum up now? Because we need, it comes the motion, then gets the sum up. That's normally the way we do it, isn't it? One moment, councillor. So we have to put the amendment first and to see what becomes the motion. So the amendment is as per C, up on the screen. All those in favour of that amendment?
Pardon, sorry. There was a minor change. We were talking about foreshadowing a motion.
Can't do that until the amendment's been voted on. Otherwise you can't have another amendment on the floor.
You can only deal with one amendment
No,
at
I
a
know,
time.
but what I was going to say was that I would accept a minor change in my motion, my original motion, to add councillor Spencer's point C into my original motion. I would accept a minor change in the
That's
original
okay, we're not at
motion.
that particular point in time. We have to deal with
I
the
beg-
amendment. That's quite all right. So all those in favour of the amendment as per the board? Councillor Spencer, Wheatley, Smith, Lennon, Nye, Pettit. Those against the amendment? Councillors Kay, Councillor Alec Taylor, Councillor Greg Taylor, Councillor Ward. The amendment has passed. The amendment now becomes the motion.
Just one step, Mr Mayor. I know councillor Spencer, you just voted for the amendment. Am I assuming you're not going to foreshadow another amendment now?
Good question. Good question. Because they're very similar. So should we do that again? Because we do have a foreshadow motion.
So the amendment is passed and comes with a motion. If you have a foreshadowed amendment, you are quite at liberty to put for your amendment.
I would be comfortable making that amendment, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Spencer has the call for his foreshadowed amendment.
So if the amendment is passed, then there's no opportunity for foreshadow.
So the amendment is no longer the amendment. It's the motion. So now councillor is at liberty to put a further amendment on the floor.
I think for transparency, we should leave the foreshadow there, if that's all right. So that means I would vote against the amendment. Otherwise I can't, because the foreshadow is still there, you put a foreshadow there. Yeah.
You've foreshadowed, so now you make the amendment at this point.
Do I do it now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So now's the time? Yep. All right. So as I said earlier, it is just the point C. So if we could have the foreshadow motion there. So essentially, we have two sides.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll wait till it comes up on the screen. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm really sorry. I can't read the motions on the screen, and the last one I didn't have my hand up for either one because I really didn't know what the motion was because I can't read it. I'm really sorry, and I can't hear Councillor Spencer at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, my microphone was off.
That's okay. We're just waiting for it to come up on the screen.
We haven't discussed anything, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, so the last one I didn't have my hand up for either way because I couldn't see what was there.
This is the foreshadow motion. That's not for. We haven't debated on this yet.
Correct. So
Can we read it?
Am I good to go?
Yeah, can we read it out?
Yes.
Councillor Spencer, you're happy that that's it? So I'll let you read it, then I'll call for a seconder if that's correct. A and B are the same. This is just a different version of C.
Yes.
If you
Give me a second.
read it out loud.
So,
for,
all
for
right.
Barbara.
So, essentially, A and B is the same as the motion and the amendment. So, this is a foreshadow motion. with only changes to C.
It's actually an amendment.
It's an amendment.
And you need a seconder before you speak.
Yeah, before, I'm not speaking, I'm just reading it. I'm just explaining to her. I don't need to, I mean, I'll just carry on. Didn't you ask me to explain to her?
Mr. Mayor, it would be good to
Thank
read
you,
it out for
thank you, Councillor Spencer.
Councillor Ward.
So C says, do I have to read so loud? Right? The required proceeds from the future sale of the existing Linfield Library will be quarantined and dedicated to the Linfield Village Hub project. That's all it is.
And a seconder for that, Councillor Alec Taylor. Councillor Spencer.
Has she read it? Okay. All right, so I'm speaking to the amendment now. So essentially, I've heard arguments from both sides, or debate rather, and there appears to be a common ground for A and B. Essentially, it is for the project of the Linfield Village Hub to proceed. So to go ahead. Now, the point C in the amendment and in the original motion, one is saying that we shouldn't, we would quarantine, and the other one saying that we shouldn't quarantine. So the proposed amendment that I have on screen right now is to say that, and I believe most councillors here, because of the inference that I'm getting from A and B, is that we all want to proceed. Now, C becomes somewhat of a guarantee that the project proceeds. So, meaning to say, if there was a shortfall, the proceed from the sale of the Linfield Library will go towards that shortfall. So assuming I'm just assuming, I'm not referring to anything confidential, I'm just assuming if we have a shortfall of 20 million, let's say, and we can sell Linfield Library, let's say. We were talking at the seminar, we might even get 60, 70, or even $90 million. Now then, if we quarantine the whole $90 million for the hub, then it will be excess. It will be too much. And then, you know, we have money for projects elsewhere that could benefit from the windfall, so to speak. Now then, earlier, Councillor Ward did say that perhaps one of the proponents can come up with a break-even point or even a surplus by selling the apartments at a higher price where there is no shortfall but a surplus. Now in that case, then the entire amount of the Linfield Library will not be required. Am I right so far? Because it is only to be drawn upon when needed. It is like a banker's guarantee that if we, you know, we are short of cash, we want this project to proceed, we know that, okay, we have something there, some credits from the sale of Linfield Library to draw upon. Now, if we don't need it, so much better. Then that money could go to a lot of places, including perhaps Marion Street Theatre. But if we quarantine the entire amount, then there is no money for St. Ives basketball courts and all those things. And I've already said that earlier, it may be unfair and a bit selfish. And I must thank my colleague, Councillor Nai, for being generous to identify that it would be unfair to keep everything in Linfield. Might I say, this is the first time I've heard him say this in 5 years. So the money should go around, but then if we don't need it, then We don't draw upon that money. But if we need it, because the hub must go on, and there is a common ground here that we want the hub to go on, if we need it, then we would draw upon the library site's proceed. And that's all it is. That's all it is, simple as that. It is exactly the same as A and B spliced together, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to keep it brief. I'm relieved that the sale of the old library is still completely 100% contingent on the construction of the new one. I appreciate all of the other perspectives shared here tonight. I agree with Councillor Spencer that we are in agreement in principle and we are arguing about degrees. I do think there is a significant difference between this amendment and the previous motion and this amendment and the previous amendment. What this amendment gives us is certainty. It gives us security, it gives us safety. This is the safest way of proceeding with the Linfield Village Hub site. I also agree with Councillor Spencer and very comfortable with him saying that I believe that we will actually probably receive more from the old library site than we are currently assuming. There will be a surplus, I'm very confident of that, and it is entirely appropriate that that surplus be allocated to other projects across Ku-ring-gai. All this does, all this motion does, all this amendment does is it is the safest way of proceeding. It gives us certainty. We can be confident that we will have the appropriate funding for the Linfield Village Hub site. I'm very strongly in favour of this motion and implore us all to please vote for it. Thank you.
Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Out of this amendment and also the original motion, which I'm not allowed to talk about at this point, I'd be supportive of both. Both A and B are still the same. We're going to get to the same point in a few months' time where we discuss further. And at any point in time, this council may completely change its mind. Point C here certainly gives a bit more certainty to residents who read into things. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure we'll find a way one way or another. I'd encourage everyone to support this motion. Plus, if you really change your mind later, you still can. But it's been a long debate here, right? Let's just get this going. We'll figure it out at the next step. And yeah, just why are we splitting hairs over minor details? Thanks.
Councillor Lennon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may beg to differ, we are not all committed to this Linfield Hub proceeding. And I fear that this amendment form of item C undermines the General Manager or his delegate in negotiating with proponent A. The General Manager ought to have the opportunity to minimise the cost to Council and not give proponent A the feeling that it doesn't matter what it agrees to because the proceeds of the sale of the current Linfield Library is open, it's available. So I would thus oppose this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lennon. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this amendment is a good one. It seems to meet everyone, but I come back to what the General Manager has alluded to a number of times, that we're not there yet. We don't know all of the money that's needed. However, what's before us we can proceed with. My only concern is whatever we do, we really don't want to delay the project anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillors, there is not a huge difference between Councillor Spencer's amendment and the latest motion. We are still putting a certain percentage, whatever amount that is, into the hub site. Both achieve the same thing. No big deal. Whatever percentage that is. The difference between the amendment and the original officer's recommendation is the amendment allows flexibility of a certain amount. The original officer's recommendation was we were tipping 100% in. Not negotiable, not anything, 100% regardless. And I don't think the majority of councillors wanted to tip 100% of the Linfield Library site into the hub. In regards to this, there's been a lot of mention about the future sale of the library site. Councillors, we have an approved DA at a certain height, which gives it an approximate certain value. If you believe that we can get a lot more, then guess what? Things are going to have to change on that site. It won't be 5 stories. 9 stories, 10, 15, who knows? If you really want to get maximum value out of that. But that's further down the track. I think the majority of us are in fairly furious agreement that we are looking to have a certain amount of money from the library site to go into the hub, to get it done. Not necessarily everybody, but I think the majority. Do I see any difference between what Councillor Spencer has been proposed and what Councillor Smith and I had up there previously? Semantics as far as I'm concerned, neither here nor there. So with this amendment, are there any further speakers on it? If not, I'm quite happy to put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? That is Councillor Spencer, Kay, Alec Taylor, Wheatley, Smith, Nye, Taylor, Pettit. Those against?
I'm in favour, Mr. Mayor, in case you can't see my hand.
Okay, I'll simplify that. Everybody's in favour of it apart from Councillor Lennon. The amendment has been carried. The amendment now becomes the motion. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Alec Taylor, as mover of the original motion some X amount of minutes ago, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favour of the motion? And I will do it by exception. That is all councillors except Councillor Lennon who voted against it. That motion is carried. Councillors, we move to GB 18.
No, I need to speak.
And would somebody like to move GB 18? Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. I'll just let them rustle.
You're good to go.
All right, GB 18. Is it on screen? I'll just wait. Oh, there it is. Sorry, is that GB 18? The recommendation. That's not it.
Have you given staff your version or that's the current officer's recommendation?
All right. So GB 18, recommendation. I'll just read it out, if that's all right, Mr. Jones. That council, are we good? That council reassess the current risks associated with the project, that council continue to negotiate the terms of a heads of agreement with NSFA, including addressing community issues, and report back to council. Sure.
Have you passed this on to staff already?
No.
Okay.
I'm reading it. Sure. That council reassess the current risks associated with the project, and council continue to negotiate the terms of a heads of agreement with NSFA, including addressing community issues and report back to council. Does that make sense?
That's it?
That's all this, including the spelling errors.
I'll just let him tidy up the spelling. And 100% correct?
Yes.
Thank you,
Need a
Councillor
seconder.
Spencer. And seconder for this? Seconded Councillor Nye. Councillor Spencer, you have the call.
I'll speak to it. So this is a very sensitive issue. It is not really contentious because I am in support of football. If you would recall, I signed a contract for Norman Griffith's synthetic field to proceed last year. I'm very supportive. I have a good relationship with Kevin, who has been working closely with me, and he did come down and consulted the community on a few occasions, and several issues were raised. So it is very promising, and I believe that it is progressing. Look, I do understand that the facilities that is upgraded at North Turramurra, NTRA, is a good thing. However, there are some issues that needs to be addressed, and I believe there is common ground there as well. Namely, amongst other things, the big ones will be traffic issues, fire, evacuation plans, and car parking issues when you have big matches, whether there is a contingent an alternate parking location where shuttle services could be organized, and then when it's too hot, and of course the enforcement of behaviors, noise, and all those things. I do not believe that the residents of North Turramurra is against the facility. Quite honestly, even when I was there at the community consultation with the president of NSFA, no one was against the project itself, unlike some other projects. For instance, I don't know, some buildings at Turramurra, Marion Street Theatre, for instance, some people might be for it, some against it, but no one is against the NTRA stadium, but they want the issues to be addressed. And I believe NSFA is working towards that by coming up with policies. Now, the reason for this is to give time for NSFA. I believe there's another public consultation on the 16th of March to come back with policies that they can implement, which they haven't. They did say to the residents that there are some policies they could implement, like for instance having the person in charge of the particular event have their name and mobile number on a signboard there, so they have someone, the residents would have someone to ring up if there are any complaints, instead of ringing to council and there's nobody around during weekends and all those things. So all those things I believe can be ironed out. Now, if those things can be addressed, then we have a much better picture of what is needed in the heads of agreement. Now, the heads of agreement, as a local government, we have to look at it from two different angles. We have to look at it as a commercial entity, of course, and we have to look at its community utility as well. Now, I've spoken mostly about the community. Now, if we look at the financial part, we have to look at this not just an asset that we would inherit. So basically, if I'm wrong, please correct me. So NSFA has a grant from the state government of about 3 million or so. Now, and they have to borrow some money to build the stadium, which is about $8 million. They have to borrow the rest of the money to build it. Now, they do not have assets, so they probably would have to mortgage the building to pay the loan. Now, we own the assets, but if it is mortgaged to the bank, we don't really own the asset. So a 20-year lease, we don't own the asset because it's mortgaged to the bank. I know I've got 1 minute more. Thank you very much.
Councillor Nye, a seconder.
I'll reserve my right to speak.
I'll have a quick question beforehand. When this is built, who owns the building? If it's built, is it NSFA own it? Can they take a mortgage out on that?
Mr Mayor, it's a council-owned building.
So therefore they cannot mortgage our building?
Correct, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so that's in regards to traffic, fire and parking, was this dealt within the DA, Director Watson?
That's my understanding, Mr Mayor.
Director Watson, in the heads of agreement that we're looking at, would that involve dealing with traffic, fire, parking, noise as part of the heads of agreement?
Not ordinarily, Mr Mayor. My report makes it fairly clear I didn't intend unpacking issues that are already been dealt with in the development application.
Okay.
And heads of agreement are ordinarily non-binding.
And if staff progress a heads of agreement, that will be reported back at some later stage to council to accept or reject?
Correct, Mr Mayor.
So, thank you, Director Watson. So this is not the final say in the matter?
No, Mr Mayor, and it sets a pathway for other transaction documents, such as a project deed and a licence. And some of those issues may fall into a licence. And some of them would be covered by plans of management, and some are considered by conditions of development consent.
Thank you, Director Watson. So in regards to plans of management, so if you're looking to exclude a particular user from hiring that site, would that be dealt with in the plan of management, if so desired?
Through you, Mr Mayor, ordinarily plans of management are fairly high level and fairly general, but you will remember that the one for Canoon Road, for example, is quite specific about particular grades that play on particular days, on particular nights at particular times. So you can get specific if you want, but we wouldn't ordinarily exclude whole groups of users in any of those documents.
And you would certainly not put those sort of restrictions within a heads of agreement. Would that be correct?
Not ordinarily, Mr Mayor, no.
Thank you, Director. I will go to Councillor Spencer. You're first on the list there, unless Councillor Kay wishes to...
No, we swapped.
Okay. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, only two, to the relevant director. So you mentioned that council owns the site earlier, following on the mayor's question. So how did NSFA get a DA to build something on our land?
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, they were given owner's consent to do so, which is custom and practice.
Right. So then can we give owner's consent for them to mortgage our property?
Director, I think you answered that one.
I've answered that
No,
question.
you haven't.
I said no.
Sorry?
No.
He said that we own the land. Could council pass a resolution to guarantee the loan?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's a different question.
Yes, by the land.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it was made clear to NSFA a long time ago that council would not be providing backing for a Treasury-backed loan. That was made abundantly clear in writing.
Right, I understand that.
Yep.
But we can.
No, they can't mortgage our land, no.
But we can pass a resolution. Can we pass a resolution to mortgage the land?
Director.
If council wants to be effectively a guarantor for a loan from Treasury, That's not a facility council offers any other community group.
I realize that, but can the council pass a resolution to guarantee the loan?
I think that's a question for Mr. Taylor.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor?
Mayor and councillors, council has the power within its functions to give financial assistance to persons or bodies, but it wouldn't have the power to give security over council community land as part of that assistance. You know, a mortgage entails potentially losing the land, and the local government restricts the circumstances under which council can dispose of land.
Thank you.
Councillor Kay?
I've just got a quick question for you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Watson. Just in relation to, just for clarity, with the heads of agreement, and it does come back a few times to council, can we terminate that at any time if we so choose?
Director?
Once we start the process.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the short answer, Councillor Kay, is yes. And given that a heads of agreement is non-binding, I would foreshadow that if problems arise, they would be in the context of a project deed or an ongoing licence rather than the heads of agreement per se.
Thank you. So just one more question which relates to Councillor Spencer's motion here. When we're looking at time frame for the council, how long would it take to, as he would say, reassess the current associated risks with this project?
Director, if that's possible to speculate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as far as I'm concerned, we've covered the high-level risks in our report. Providing funding guarantees to the club is not something that we had considered a risk because the project is supposedly fully funded until I was asked the question 3 minutes ago. That is a risk that we haven't unpacked. Ordinarily, as part of a capital expenditure review, we would do a risk matrix, and it's our obligation to keep the risk matrix up to date with risks as they evolve.
So potentially that risk will come back to us, depending on Councillor Spencer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would report a number of things back to council at various points in time, and we would always have a risk element in all of our reports. We wouldn't ordinarily get council to sign off on a risk matrix, but it would certainly be covered in reports about heads of agreement, reports about project deeds, reports about licences. It would be covered in a capital expenditure review, so it's not something that isn't front and centre all of the time.
Thank you, Councillor Kay. Well, I'm happy to move an amendment, which is the officer's recommendation. Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just was trying to get a clarification from Councillor Speck. I actually did have a look at their balance sheet, which is on the public domain on their website, and they appear to have healthy cash balance. So is there some suggestion, or is this, are we suggesting that they don't have the money?
I think the question was, is there some speculation that they don't have the money, Director Watson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, until we, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, we have some fairly high-level concept plans only, and a cost plan that is it's more than about a year old. The plans have not been detailed to the point where the project is ready to go to tender. I saw some emails in the last couple of days which was wanting to cap the club's exposure to $6 million. As I said when we were workshopping last week, before I'd seen those emails, I didn't think this was a $6 million project, and I still don't, Mr Mayor. I think it's a little bit over that considerably, in fact.
And that's really up to the NSFA and their board, et cetera, to deal with the funding of it, not the council. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would have been preparing heads of agreement based on the project, extremely clear in my report, being fully funded at no cost to council. I would still proceed on that basis. In the ordinary fashion, before we went to tender, council would have to have all of the funds in its bank account, as we do for all projects. And in the event that NSFA did not like the tender prices, similar to other major projects, the basketball courts, for example, NSFA and council would have the opportunity to withdraw from the project, bearing in mind that that's what we did in the past case, and I allude to using similar documentation, but we don't have those transaction documents in place yet. But if we followed past practice, there would be a number of opportunities for both parties to withdraw if the funds weren't available.
And Director, to get those transaction documents, we would have to pass the officer's recommendation. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr Mayor. For those of you in the room who followed the St Ives basketball courts, that process was multiple year process, and that's why I've suggested using the same basic format as covered by those previous transaction documents. The main point of difference being that we would switch roles in the basketball courts. We weren't the property owner or the property procurement agency or the project procurement agency, but in this case we would, so we would switch with what was Schools Infrastructure New South Wales position in that last set of documents.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A question through you, I believe, for Director Watson again, and you may have actually just answered this question, but I just am looking for clarity here that in the event that the costs of this project blow out, that my question is there any risk that council will be left holding those blowout costs? Is there any possibility of a risk to us of having to pick up footing the bill for an extra however many million?
Director Watson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's why I said we would have all of the money in our bank account before we went to tender, and that would include a contingency. There is always the possibility of variations along the way which go beyond the contingency. You could never say it's a zero risk game, Councillor Taylor, simply because the contract is with council, not with NSFA. So it's not a completely risk-free process, no. It's a question of how much money you have in your bank account when you start the project.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks for clarifying that. That was one of the things I was actually going to clarify, that there's virtually no risk to council on this matter. But what I did want to just confirm, through you, Director Watson, as council here, we've got the opportunity of having a stand built for the greater part of Ku-ring-gai to use at no cost to this council. Is that fair to say?
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that was the premise on which the report was written, yes, but it wasn't the premise on which a number of questions have been directed at me this evening, no.
So all in total, we're talking about very little risk, the opportunity to be giving something back to the community. Well, not that we can even really take that much credit for it, really. For something to be built here that we're going to have generations that are going to benefit from it. So thank you for answering that.
Councillor Lennon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to confirm, can we not contract on the basis of ensuring that should there be cost overruns above the contingency, that the costs are still met by NSFA as a point of contract law?
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, people are asking me to jump ahead to documents that we haven't...
That you haven't yet seen, yes. Councillors, I'm quite happy to move an amendment, which is the officer's recommendation. Seconded by Councillor Smith. So with the officer's recommendation, councillors, it gives us the opportunity to get those documents and actually progress it and find out whether this project is financially possible from NSFA's perspective. The risk to us is very minimal. We are not handing over ratepayers' money with a blank cheque. We want to be seen as actually encouraging appropriate sporting development within our area that will benefit thousands of players from various ages upwards. Recently, when a few of us, the councillor and I, Councillor Whitley, were up there was probably over in excess of 100 females, probably between the ages of 10 to 14, out in the hot sun doing their training skills with no shelter to go to. I think we are almost the only association, SFA, that does not have any form of seating or amenities to get out of the sun, to get out of the freezing cold. We actually want to encourage children to be active and take up sport. We don't want them to leave the area and go and play other associations. We want them to play in our area. So I don't see too many downsides. We've had the DA assessed and approved independently, which dealt with traffic, fire, parking, etc., noise. NSFA have actually prepared and put it in writing that they're prepared to go above and beyond that with various issues. So I can't see the downside with going with the officer's recommendation. And I would encourage you to do that to allow the potential opportunity for this project to be built. It will be reported back. Again, this is not where it ends. It comes back. If it ticks all the boxes and looks great, happy days. If it doesn't, what does it cost us? Not hundreds of thousands of dollars. We haven't invested any of ratepayers' money in the project. I'll leave that. Councillor Smith is seconder to the amendment.
Mr Mayor, I'll just reserve my right for the moment, but I wouldn't mind asking some questions, if I may.
You can ask questions, yes.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, through you to who you think's best, one of the directors best to operate, to answer these questions. Will council still control these questions have been put together mainly because there's been so much information and overload coming backwards and forwards, and I think that it's quite important just to get some facts and some real figures in front of people so that they're comfortable in the decision they're going to make this evening. So on the basis of that, I just wanted to confirm, will council still control the hours of usage if the proposal goes ahead?
Director Watson?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the hours of operation will be covered by a combination of conditions of development consent and plans of management that for time to time council may change.
So council will have control of that? Yes. Thank you. On another one, who currently determines the hours of usage at NTRA?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's covered by council plans and management.
So we do.
So we're still covering, okay. I had a question here, but you answered it on the previous one, but has council been asked to pay for any of the build, which we've already confirmed that. Does NSFA hire in the mornings on weekdays? If so, who to?
Director Banasif, I believe that's probably your area.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the NSFA are not allowed to offload the hire of the fuel. They hire it through us. for their own use. And do they hire it in the morning? That would
Weekdays.
depend, weekdays, well, that would depend on the booking systems, but usually there is a fitness. It is hired for fitness rather than the SFA themselves.
Okay, so we've got fitness that's hiring it there in the mornings there. Thank you. What is the earliest the field can be hired on the weekends? What's the earliest time? I've got to put you to the...
Director Banasif?
It would be at I believe it's 8:30 on the weekends, but I could be wrong. Could be at 8:30, 9.
Oh, okay, thank you, because I've just heard that it's been getting played a lot earlier, but okay. Is it possible that other groups are using it in early morning, either with or without permission?
Director Banasif?
That is possible. It is a community facility.
Yeah, okay. Does NSFA have any current bookings in the morning other than on weekends?
Director?
I'd have to check the booking systems and come back to you. I'll take that on notice.
I've looked into it and I don't think so. What time are those bookings for? Has council had any issues with NSFA using the field out of hours?
Director?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think that's enough questions for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lennon?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the General Manager, I'm not sure who's the best person to ask, but we have two options before us, the officer's recommendation moved by the Mayor and Councillor Spencer's amendment. What are the differences as a practical matter between the two?
Director Watson? Or was... I'm looking.
Mr Mayor, can I have a look at Councillor Spencer's word? My screen
Yep.
Isn't working today.
I think while that's coming up, there certainly is one glaring difference, and that is the documentation. Under Councillor Spencer's motion, there is no documentation.
So from memory, Councillor Spencer's motion went to assessing risk.
I'm sorry, it does speak to continue to negotiate the terms of a heads of agreement, which I think is word for word out of the officer's recommendation, isn't it?
Director?
Well, Mr Mayor, the short answer is it leaves a lot of things out of the officer's recommendation.
So there appears to be a massive difference between the two.
It leaves out who pays for preparation of documents. It leaves out how the project is dealt with internally. It leaves out the fact that we would rely on documentation prepared for the basketball courts. It leaves out elements that point to social and environmental value rather than pure feasibility. It leaves out understanding of any of the risks that are identified in the report, and it leaves out reference to transaction documents going back to council, and it also leaves out reference to the capital expenditure review that we are obliged to carry out.
Thank you, Director.
Is it fair to summarise by saying that it removes a lot of the protections in place currently for the residents, or if we follow the officer's recommendation?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think that's actually a reasonable summary, and the things that it requires me to do, i.e. risk and continue to negotiate, are covered in here anyway. So I would say there are protections in the officer's recommendation, intentionally put there, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to speak to this amendment. Now, look, I'm generally supportive of the concept of having a grandstand here. I like the idea that the spectator stand allows for spectators to have a place of shelter. I like the idea that we're tripling the amount of changing room space. It may support things such as increasing the amount of female participation in the sport. I like the fact that it's making good use of an already fantastic set of sports grounds, and I generally support the idea that this should continue to be the location and home of the Tigers. Now, during the last month, we have heard from various residents their concerns about the proposal. Some have had concerns about noise and things like that, but to that I sort of think, well, look, Sydney is growing, the population is increasing, and so if we do choose to live near a residential area, over time, I just can't guarantee when, whether it's tomorrow or in a few decades' time, you should expect that the level of activity will increase in your area. I've heard complaints about, look, a lot of the people who use this facility are outsiders, they don't live in the LGA. But to that, I'd say, look, I also use facilities that aren't in our LGA. I go ice skating in Ryde, my residents play netball in Willoughby, I go to Balmoral for the beach, my waste goes somewhere, you know, not in our LGA. Like that is the fundamental concept of having, you know, sharing resources around with other LGAs. I've heard bushfire concerns, but with that, I think, you know what, if it's a hot day, we're not going to have soccer games there anyway. We're not going to have the traffic there to cause congestion, and there is quite good, you know, forecasting out there for fire concerns. So look, I don't buy some of these concerns that residents have. It's like throwing the kitchen sink to argue a case. However, I do have one concern over one thing, which is the NSFA's social license to operate on this site. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that it is a concern to me to see that they are currently operating here without a lot of support from local residents. To me, the biggest issues that I have are with regard to illegal parking, traffic, and the general lack of parking in the general area. You can go on site and there's a number of parking spots, but especially if we build a spectator stand and increase the number of visitors to the area, then they will spill over to a Bob and Head Road even more. To me, I believe that there's a hidden cost of this project that we haven't anticipated as a council. To me, I believe that part of the cost of doing this sort of thing properly would be to increase the amount of parking on site, whether it be above ground, underground, stabilised and reclaimed golf course, I don't know what, but to me, there needs to be more parking on site one way or another. To me, Bob and Head Road should be widened so as to assist with traffic flows. But these are all costs
Point of order. Sorry, just 1 second.
Yeah, put in order, Councillor Smith.
We're now talking about widening Bob and Head Road. We should have better roads. We should have more traffic lights. We should have a lot of things in Ku-ring-gai. Is this really relevant to what we're discussing now?
It's probably not relevant to a heads of agreement, Councillor Nye.
I'm just trying to find the relevance of what we're doing here this evening.
This is a horse before the cart or cart before the horse type of thing. Ultimately, I believe that we should provide for the infrastructure first before then building the facilities. I'm not entirely made up my mind as to whether or not to support this motion. I'll leave it to the debate of the council here before I make up my mind.
Councillor Smith.
Mr Mayor, I might just have a question there for Councillor Nye. Councillor Nye, did you just sign a rescission there just earlier?
Yes, I did.
So, Councillor Nye, I think you've made your decision. Thank you. We'll just sit for the moment.
To the relevant, I might actually ask the GM, is this normal procedure where a council would say that they haven't made up their mind but then sign a rescission behind the scenes? That appears to be totally contradicting what was said.
On face value, it will be, Mr Mayor, but I don't know what the rescission pertains to nor the wording of it. But if it's about this matter, that would be highly unusual, yes.
Would this potentially be a code of conduct?
Mr Mayor and councillors, you can't discuss or make accusations about codes of conduct in informal council meetings.
Thank you, General Manager.
Mr Mayor, I would question all councillors this evening here that have signed a rescission whilst this matter is still up for discussion and we're still working through it. So as a councillor, I'm quite disappointed, but I will continue just the same in arguing the case of, and hopefully this rescission may be thought about in its due course.
Indeed. Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a question through you, Mr Mayor, to the relevant director. Actually, not sure if it's Mr Watson. I actually do see the relevance of talking about traffic and parking on Bobbin Head Road because I think we could possibly address some of those issues through this next stage of the project. I think it is a relevant thing to be thinking about. My question is there anything more that council could do either within or in parallel to this project to address those issues? There's those issues around the overflow impact of parking on Bobbin Head Road or even just traffic, increased traffic on Bobbin Head Road. Is there more we can do, the council can do, to address those issues either in parallel or within this project?
Director Banasif.
So with regards to this project, or with regards to the traffic flow on Bobbin Head Road, council recently undertook some works to widen Bobbin Head Road to allow for a cycle lane. It was met with a resistance from the local community, from the residents living along Bobbin Head Road, and we were forced to reduce some of those areas that we proposed to widen. So from a community perspective, it would be quite difficult. From a traffic point of view, from an engineering point of view, you need to undertake a traffic study, but from the most recent works and looking at the survey drawings, it is a very difficult road to widen to allow for two-way lanes on either side, as well as additional parking along Bobbin Head Road.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Councillor Lennon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually suggest Councillor Nye is quite correct to those issues like traffic. There are issues like traffic, like noise, parking across people's driveways, that have been a concern, quite rightly and understandably, of the local residents for some time. What is, I think, their concern about the proposal tonight is that the stand would exacerbate attendance and thus add to problems already in place. I suggest that is possibly questionable. I'm very pleased, and as I think possibly Councillor Spencer alluded and others have, that the Northern Suburbs Football Association has actually been in dialogue with the North Turramurra Action Group of late, has made undertakings concerned with, for instance, providing shuttle bus services from Turramurra Station, has undertaken not to operate professional games, to limit Northern Tigers games to those, if you like, semi-professional games to those involving Northern Tigers, has said that it will not install a public address system, notwithstanding the fact that the DA does allow it to do so. So I think it's very gratifying that the Northern Suburbs Football Association is so sensitive to the local residents. I think there's been a lot of progress of late, and I'm inclined to support the officer's recommendation because I can see those constructive steps forward. I fear that in spite of the good intentions of seeing words like sensitive to the residents in Councillor Spencer's proposed amendment, as a practical matter, there will be more to safeguard the residents by the officer's recommendation, having regard to the current positive step forward. And in reliance on the undertakings made by the Northern Suburbs Football Association, I'd be inclined to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lennon. Councillor Smith.
Mr Mayor, through you to the relevant director, what funding would be at risk with the NSFA and the Football Association, if you like, if this evening we were not to proceed with the officer's recommendation, or if we were to put a rescission in after the event?
Director Watson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, difficult questions for me to answer because the funding agreements aren't with council. But I have seen draft version of a particular type of funding agreement which has particular milestones in place, which would be extremely difficult for anybody to meet if there was too much more delay. And in the same way, I was extremely conscious of caretaker periods when I was wrapping up documentation for the St Ives basketball courts. I would like to see this progress as much as we possibly could, again, prior to caretaker period coming into force.
And if we were not to deny the grant, basically denying the Liberal Party's grant this evening,
Sorry, point of order.
do we not?
Point of order?
Yes, please.
Point of order, Councillor Spencer.
Is this a Liberal Party grant?
No, Councillor Spencer was actually asking, Councillor Smith was framing a question.
So it's not a Liberal Party grant then? Is a grant coming from a Liberal Party?
Sorry, I'll
No.
reframe that. The Liberal Party have signed off on this particular grant.
Sorry, he might be confused between the Liberal state government and the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party is much bigger than...
Councillor Spencer, you're debating the matter. I think Councillor Smith might want to frame it as the state Liberal government.
The New South Wales State Liberal Party, which I believe Councillor Spencer is is a member of the Liberal Party, not in the state government, is possibly where Councillor Spencer was going. In any case, if at any time, if we were to proceed and move forward, we've still got the opportunity to pull out of this during the heads of agreement. Is that correct?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think I answered a similar question very early on. There will be multiple points at which council could either withdraw from the heads of agreement or a project deed, or decide not to issue a project, a user licence, subject to a number of factors not being satisfied, including price and cost.
So this could be seen as a timing issue that some councillors may want to take advantage of, that the grant may not be there. Would that be fair to say?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that causes some speculation on my part, but in the event that contracted milestones in a funding agreement aren't met, funding is always at risk.
And I suppose considering that we've got a March state election, which is the one that approved this particular funding.
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Alec Taylor?
Mr Mayor and Mr Spencer, Councillor Spencer, are you comfortable to end debate at this point?
I do have a couple of other questions. Councillor Taylor? With the potential rescission motion, which might have well been signed by 3 councillors this evening, as
speculation.
I'm framing the question. So with a potential rescission motion coming forward on this particular item, which may or may not eventuate, would that make it extremely difficult in regards to the timing and timelines for NSFA and the grant that they have received. Director Watson?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's my understanding that the project has to commence by July, and that is extremely difficult under any circumstances.
So therefore a rescission motion would put things on hold and therefore make it almost impossible. Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would be doing nothing on the MOU until the matter was resolved by council, and then I would still have the transaction documents to go through. And that's several months working, assuming we agree on all of the principles and matters of substance straight up, which is highly unlikely.
Thank you, Director. So the way I see that is if a rescission did come through this evening, it would be sending a clear message that those councillors do not wish this project to proceed and therefore kill off the grant funding opportunities for NSFA. That, councillors, is a big call and a big statement.
Point of order.
Yes, point of order.
I think that's a huge amount of speculation. They might be putting in.
That's not a point of order, Councillor Taylor. You need to raise a point of order.
Can you repeat that? Am I allowed to continue talking?
I'm quite happy to say that using a rescission motion at this particular point in time will definitely jeopardise the grant funding that NSFA has received. Is that correct, Director Watson?
Mr Mayor, it makes a difficult task infinitely more difficult, yes.
So when we're saying infinitely difficult, we're saying a very low chance of them being able to meet their deadlines? Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that had caused me to have to speculate about changes that may or may not be possible in relation to funding agreements they might sign in the interim.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Spencer.
Oh, a couple of questions. So this is in relation to the questions from the Mayor and Councillor Smith. So it appears to me that my question is that the funding and the project is more important than the community in terms of timing. So the funding and the project must proceed before community consultation. Is that correct?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to answer that.
Councillor Smith.
It's clear that Councillor Spencer wasn't listening earlier this evening because I think Director Watson's stated 3 times at any point during the heads of agreement we can actually reverse this. But currently, with what would be seen a position of some councillors.
Point of order. I'm sorry, but I believe that is making unfavourable personal remarks about another councillor in chambers. The statement about Councillor Spencer not listening and not hearing is making unfavourable personal remarks.
Thank you,
about
Councillor
another...
Taylor. That potentially is a point of order. You might want to withdraw that statement.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Spencer, withdraw that. Maybe you didn't hear Director Watson in when he explained at any point we can actually withdraw this. All that's risky here at the moment, if we don't proceed, is the funding to this project that will kill the project. So I hope that answers your answer. Thank you.
Councillor Spencer?
Sorry, maybe I'm not hearing again. My question was about, is the funding and the project more important than the community? My question wasn't about the possibility of killing it, because that was my question.
So is that directed to anybody in particular or just in general?
He answered the question.
Okay, Councillor.
So that wasn't the question I asked.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Spencer, to answer your question, no, that's not the case at all. It is not more important. I do believe that it has gone through a process. I believe the process has been very thorough. I believe that there, with quite a number of the questions and everything that we went through this evening, that we clarified with the staff, has actually pointed out that a lot of these have been taken care of already. So I don't believe it is putting the project in front of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the matter of the community and what the community wants, I believe that we went through a couple of processes of notifications on this project. It's getting late. I believe my question is for possibly Director Marchich, through you, Mr Mayor. Could you please describe the consultation that was performed through the DA process and the high-level results of that consultation?
Director.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. As I indicated to Councillor Taylor earlier, the DA was independently assessed and independently determined, so staff had no involvement other than purely administrative. Part of that administration involved the notification process for the DA, and in that process we followed the prescribed provisions of Council's Community Participation Plan, which specifies the notification catchment for all application typologies. And in this particular case, given the scope and the size of the project and the anticipated community concern, we went above and beyond, considerably above and beyond the catchment that was specified for notification purposes in our Community Participation Plan. So there was a fairly substantial breadth of notification, and that occurred on two occasions. Initially, when the application was first lodged with Council in late 2021, and then subsequently when the matter was considered by the KLPP, and the KLPP resolved that it required further information from the applicant in order to make a determination. Again, when that information was requested by the KLPP, Council also undertook a second round of notification and consulted even more broadly, and we received even more responses, both favourable and unfavourable, for and against the project from the community at large in that area.
Thank you, Director Marchich. Again, just to follow up, Mr Mayor, what was the overall outcome of that second notification?
Director? I'm not quite sure what through you.
The for and against count.
Director, if you have that at hand, or you might want to take that on notice.
There was, I can't give you the exact figures, but there were substantially more people in favour of the proposal based on the submissions from the second round of notification.
Thank you.
Councillor Kay.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to Director Watson. I have an email here from some concerned residents. To be honest, not a resident I usually agree with, but I just want to read out a couple of points that they have highlighted just to make sure that they're true and accurate. They've said that they have the fact that the landowner's consent was not provided for the grant applications for the Office of Sport, Multi-Sport Community Facility Fund and the Female Friendly Community Sport Facility. They claim that the Office of Sport criteria stipulate this as a key eligibility requirement. Secondly, they've got the two New South Wales grants for the project appear to contradict the grant funding guidelines, and that the program will not fund, in brackets, projects already funded by the New South Wales Government unless significant new project scope is identified. Can you just please clarify if they are true and accurate statements?
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm not going to clarify all of it, but I'll deal with some of it. Council, there has been a number of grant applications over a number of years for which Council did provide landowners' consent. The successful grant applications, Council did not provide landowners' consent. And as to compliance with guidelines, they are guidelines, and when we were workshopping this last week, I made it very clear that I wasn't going to go and unpack somebody else's interpretation of their guidelines. In good faith, I'm looking for a way forward on this project if Council wants to go ahead with the project, and I don't intend trawling over issues that are outside of my sphere of influence.
Thank you. Just one more question for Director Watson. We seem to talk about the current state government and the Liberals obviously being the current. Do you believe that there would be any risk with the Labor government coming in? I mean, a good project is a good project at the end of the day. Other than the milestones, is there any other reason for concern?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that would cause speculation on my part.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, we've had more than 2 for and 2 against, and I'm happy to put that amendment. All those in favour of putting the amendment?
Mr Mayor, I just wouldn't mind just speaking.
All right, I'll let you. Thank you.
Sorry,
I hadn't
left
got to
very
it, so.
I apologise. I think this evening we've had here it clarified we've gone above and beyond with the consultation. We've had an independent party, the KLPP, to go through it, who even requested further information and deeper consultation and information in regarding it. Tonight here, if we are not to proceed, we are basically saying to the NSFA and the footballers in this Ku-ring-gai to basically telling them, advising them that, sorry, we found a way out. We do not want you to have a stand, even though we've gone through all of the consultation. Tonight we have the opportunity to deliver a stand. It's a stand that creates shade. It's a stand that has seating. It's a stand that has change rooms. I would hope and I would encourage all councillors here this evening to seriously consider this for the people of the Ku-ring-gai, that they have the opportunity for their children to use these type of facilities. We're here this evening. We've all been elected to deliver these type of projects at no cost to this council. And I'm just completely gobsmacked that I'm actually having to push this point that hard to get the support for this. This is a good thing. I was out there on Saturday mowing the lawn. I was looking for shade and I started to think, my God, if I was out there watching my kids playing football, I'd get in my car and I'd go seek some shade. Can we please just deliver some shade to the people of Ku-ring-gai? Surely we can deliver that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I will put that amendment as per the screen. Which is the staff recommendation, yes. All those in favour of the staff recommendation, that is Councillor Alec Taylor, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Ward. Those against, Councillor Spencer, Kay, Nye and Greg Taylor. The amendment is passed. The amendment becomes the motion. Would anybody wish to speak to the motion, or we're all done? I'm quite happy to put that motion then. As mover of the original motion, Councillor Spencer, do you wish to sum up? Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Therefore, the motion is the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, that is Councillors Alec Taylor, Councillor Kim Wheatley, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Ward. Against, Councillor Spencer, Councillor Kay, Councillor Nye, Councillor Taylor. That is carried.
Just do these couple of little things, clean up, so then we'll go extra reports.
Okay, I'll do that little extra. General Manager, extra reports.
There are none, Mr Mayor. Business without notice.
Actually,
Business
I'm going to
without-
call for an adjournment. Because he's going to put in that decision.
No, we'll do these first.
But business without notice is to do with rescission on the 9th.
No, you can still call urgency when you get it. No,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay.
That's different.
Councillors, business without notice subject to clause 9.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Questions with notice? There are none this evening.
And no inspections.
There are no inspections. Before we move to our little confidential, I would like to call a 5-minute adjournment. All those in favour of 5-minute adjournment? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Staff have received a rescission motion in regards to GB 18. We, the undersigned, hereby rescind resolution of GB 18 signed by Councillors Spencer, Kay and Nye. Councillor Smith, you have something?
Mr Mayor, I would like to, I want to move urgent business without notice due to what you just advised, that there is a rescission that has been received and which is going to put this grant funding at risk, and I believe that it needs to be this rescission needs to be dealt with this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay. Councillor Smith has moved that this matter be dealt with this evening and as a matter of urgency. Can I have a seconder for that? Seconded, Councillor Wheatley. Councillors, we are voting on whether to deal with this matter this evening, this urgency motion. All right, so that we deal with it and deal with the rescission this evening.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. This actually is a point of order, I believe. I'm just questioning, is this a lawful purpose? Is this a lawful motion? Is this as per the rules of debate?
Director Marshall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, a rescission motion can be dealt with at the same meeting on the basis that, firstly, there's a motion passed to consider it, and secondly, the chairperson rules the business to be of great urgency on the grounds that it requires a decision by the council before the next scheduled ordinary meeting of council. And that is a matter for the chairperson, the mayor, and a motion of dissent cannot be moved against that ruling.
I hope that clarifies, and I'm quite happy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Given what Councillor Smith said, and I do rule in favour of urgency, given that there are time constraints, and we know the ramifications of leaving this for at least another month or so. And it is a long lead time between the February and March meetings, some 6 weeks approximately. So therefore I rule that this is an urgent matter. And I would call for the vote that this is an urgent matter and to be dealt with, and it's been moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Pettit. All those in favour of dealing with this rescission this evening? That is Councillor Alec Taylor, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Ward, are you somewhere there? Okay.
Councillor Ward, are you there?
All right, so we have Councillor Alec Taylor, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Pettit in favour of urgency, and we dealt with that this evening. Those against? Councillor Spencer, Councillor Kay, Councillor Nye, Councillor Greg Taylor. With Councillor Ward not being there, her vote is a negative. That is 5-5. I'm 5-5. So
yes, Mr. Mayor, I have got my hand up.
which way? Because we can't see you.
Can you hear me?
Can you speak up loud and say, are you in favour of the urgency?
I can hear you guys.
Councillor Ward, I've called for the vote that this.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's a great idea. Can she use the chat?
She's a yes. Yes.
Okay. So it's 5-4, 5-5. That's fine. Yep. Okay. That's right. Yep. She's got to be in the meeting. Yep. Yep. Councillors, with Councillor Ward absent, it's as if she's not in the chamber, so therefore we have 9 voting councillors. And those in favour are Councillors Alec Taylor, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Pettit. Those against being Councillor Spencer, Councillor Kay, Councillor Nye, Councillor Greg Taylor. That motion... Barbara, can you hear us? Councillor Ward?
Oh, I can hear you now. Did you get my chat? And I said that I was voting for.
Okay, so we have currently in favour of urgency are Councillors Alec Taylor, Wheatley, Smith, Lennon, Pettit, and you're in favour of urgency, Councillor Ward?
Me.
Okay, that makes 6.
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. And those against were Councillor Spencer, Kay, Nye, Taylor. That is carried 6-4 for urgency to deal with that this evening. We have the rescission motion in front of us, which is to rescind GB 18. I'm certainly speaking against that rescission motion. I think it... Somebody needs to move the rescission.
Yes, I'll move the rescission.
Moved by Councillor Spencer. There being no second. Seconded by Councillor Kay. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. I shall not speak any further. I just hope that that a chance will be given for the community to be heard. That's all. The consultation wasn't entirely done properly. Councillor Taylor asked me earlier whether should I raise this issue about the second notification. Now, the second notification from KLPP was notified on, I think, Tuesday, and the answer was required by Friday if Mr. Mahosik is not here. Yes, and because the hearing was on Monday, I believe, or Tuesday, so there's not enough time for people to lodge submissions. Now, same thing happened.
That's probably not necessarily in relation to a rescission motion, Councillor Spencer.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because consultation. He voted for the thing, and he spoke about consultation being thorough and complete, and he's satisfied with notification. So the rescission has to do with lack of consultation, and I have spoken in my motion that there's lack of consultation. It's about consultation. That's all it is. If we can consult, come back, and if the issues are addressed, I will support the motion to go ahead with the MOU. What I'm trying to say is that we can't go ahead with the MOU without having a proper consultation with them. I do not believe that the state government's election or the grant and so on is more important than our community. I represent the community. I'm a local ward councillor. I, as Councillor Smith said earlier, not a member of state government. I'm a member of Ku-ring-gai Council. Now, this is a Ku-ring-gai Council issue, the residents of Ku-ring-gai Council, and this is in Wahroonga Ward, where I'm the ward councillor. And therefore, I have to support my community. It is as simple as that. If they want to be heard, I believe they should be heard. Just like I listen to communities from other wards as well. Linfield, Turramurra, Roseville and the other wards. I listen to them. So I am just asking for councillors here to listen to the community from my ward, because I've got 3 minutes.
Councillor Spencer, a rescission motion normally refers to an error in what was moved and passed.
That's right. The consultation. So that is all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer.
Do you want me to clarify anything else? Okay, thanks.
Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that Councillor Spencer is rescinding the motion that we just passed on the basis that there was information not discussed regarding the community consultation before we passed that motion. I would like the opportunity to ask the question of relevant staff through you. Can you ask a question when speaking to a rescission motion?
Director Marshall.
Mr. Mayor, yes, you can. The debate is the same as per any motion.
Okay. So I would love to clarify some of the comments made by Councillor Spencer, but I believe the director responsible has currently left the chambers. But I'm interested in his views on those comments about notification. I believe I should just move on. Okay. In which case, the final thing I wanted to say is that I respect rescissions. And I think they do give the opportunity to the community to re-engage and to potentially change the debate. So we could come back to another public forum. We could hear from different people, more people. I actually think there are good reasons for having rescissions, and I believe that Councillors Spencer and the other relevant councillors had good intentions when they submitted this rescission. However, I do think, specifically on the matter that we approved, that we did debate it a lot, and I think we made a decision. I think what we've decided does not rule out changing course in the next meeting. I think we could still change course in the next meeting if we wanted to, and I'm certainly open to that. So I'm therefore speaking against this rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to direct a question to Councillor Spencer. Normally when we put a rescission motion through, especially since after July 2019, quite often it is rushed, and then there is a month before there's an opportunity to fine-tune and say we rescind blah, blah, blah. And if the rescission is successful, we instead propose this alternate motion, like this alternate measure instead. Are we doing that for this, like that's being moved by you and seconded by Councillor Kay? Is there something we'll do instead if...
Councillor Spencer, if the question's asked to you, whether you can answer that?
Yes, I can. I can include more wording. If the rescission is passed, then more wording.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer.
All right, so should I put a wording there?
No, the question was, you've
Okay.
answered it, yes. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be speaking against this rescission. I think it's been pretty clear here this evening that as a council we've gone far and beyond to make sure that the public consultation has been done correctly. The council officers gave it to the KLPP to deal with, basically that they didn't want to be too close to it or what could have been seen as close to it. The KLPP then went out to consultation and extraordinarily gave the opportunity for a second lot of consultation, which is not given
normally. So I believe in this case that all the consultation's been done properly. The people have been given, the residents have been given the opportunity, and all those matters have been dealt with, and is the reason why this recommendation came here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lennon.
I think Councillor Ward might have a hand up.
That's okay, Councillor Lennon, you can go, and then I'll go after you.
Look, I just wanted to make the point that we have been presented with two options tonight in terms of the two motions, and contrary to what Councillor Spencer suggests, I believe that the motion that we did pass is the one that does more to protect the residents of North Turramurra, to safeguard their legitimate concerns over a long period of time going forward. I think the NSFA has demonstrated sensitivity, and I think, as we heard from Director Watson, there are more safeguards in the officer's recommendation than there are in the alternative motion that Councillor Spencer puts forward. So I would simply beg to differ that the best thing, in my view, the residents of the North Turramurra, in a very imperfect world, no doubt about it, but the best option, I believe, for the people of North Turramurra is the resolution as we passed earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lennon. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will also be speaking against this. And may I say, I've received many phone calls over the weekend. Since last Thursday, my phone has been bombarded. I even got pulled up at my church on Sunday by a number of people to talk about this matter. I have emails to show that residents have actually been talking to Kevin directly about this matter. They have also come and said that they are now at a point when they are agreeing to some of the points they raised with Kevin, and he was coming to party and he was giving them some comfort, and they're not quite there yet, but they were getting some comfort. So my understanding is, apart from the fact that the council has done some work with the residents themselves have also been talking to Kevin Johnston about what their desires or what their needs or their concerns are. So to say, I'm here to serve the community, I serve my community, I put my hand up to serve the community. But in my mind and what I have seen, there has been a lot of discussions about this. The issue perhaps is that both parties are not quite there yet. And Director Watson also explained to us what we were doing tonight. We were merely going ahead with heads of agreement, and we've got plenty of time, plenty of things to come back to the council. We're not committing anything in stone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. And just to reiterate, for Councillor's perspective, should this rescission be passed, we would be going back to square one where nothing has been resolved. Just so that's crystal clear.
Oh, no, I can put in the amendments. Because I wasn't given the opportunity to put in the wording.
So are there any further speakers in regards to the rescission motion? Councillor Spencer, you've already spoken to it.
Questions?
You can question.
So, firstly, question to Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith, are you aware that when the KLPP asked for further information, that the council would then have to re-notify the residents?
Councillor Smith.
Could you just repeat that question, Councillor Spencer? It's getting late this evening.
Okay. So you put in an application through KLPP, and they asked for more questions to come back again.
Sorry, who asked for more questions?
KLPP.
Yes, correct, yes. Okay, yep, the second time.
All right, so then council is required to re-notify the residents for the next hearing.
I believe that council, and as Director Myosic explained, went through all the correct procedures and went far and beyond that was required. So I believe that we have, yes.
Well, firstly, they're not allowed to go far and beyond or anything less because there'll be ultra-virus. So they have to follow the rule, and they have re-notified, as with other DAs that's gone with KLPP.
That's not a question.
I want to ask him whether he is aware of that.
Councillor Spencer, I do rely upon the information that I ask here this evening that the directors answer me honestly, and I believe, I think what you're alluding to is you're getting into some detail is what it is. I don't know the full detail of what the expectations are, but my belief is that everything has been carried out accordingly.
All right, so just
Thank
follow
you.
on. What is the basis of your statement when you said that the KLPP consulted the residents twice, which is extraordinary?
What I was stating, I was literally reiterating the point that Director Myosic made, that the KLPP, when involved, they did a consultation period, and there was still some further questions and concerns, and they gave that opportunity for those to be investigated and looked, and gave the opportunity to the residents to write in that, which were dealt with.
So that was my earlier question. Was he aware that every DA goes through the same process? Are you aware that every time they come back with questions, council has to re-notify?
My understanding is that there was a lot of tolerance. I did question this in particular about the second time. My understanding is there was a lot of tolerance given, and quite often they don't. The KLPP would not have given the opportunity to do it, which they did in this case,
so
to the benefit of the residents.
All right, so just one last question for Councillor Smith. Were you aware that they were notified on Tuesday and required to answer by Friday?
I haven't got the dates, and I'm assuming, well, not assuming, I'm confident that procedural process had taken place, and considering that this was already on the go, there would be an expectation that those questions would be answered in a quicker manner.
All right, thanks. Question for Councillor Lennon. Councillor Lennon, could you identify some of the safeguards that you mentioned a few times in your speeches that is provided in the officer's recommendation that is found in the MOU?
I'm failing to see relevance here to a rescission motion. We're actually going back and debating what was...
No, it is part of the rescission. So he said, he raised the issue of safeguard. So I'm asking him a question in relation to his speech.
I'm actually going to rule that as not being relevant to the
So
rescission
I can't
motion.
ask him to clarify his speech in the rescission debate? He just said that he was satisfied with the safeguards. In this debate.
So I'm failing to see any relevance, so I'm not going to rule that.
No, he did say.
Councillor Spencer, you are debating and I have made my decision.
You can't make the decision. Tell me the clause that you are basing your decision on.
That we are not actually dealing with the rescission motion as printed, which is basically saying that we hereby rescind the resolution. That's all it is.
So my question is on his speech. I'm asking him to clarify.
Councillor Lennon, if you wish to clarify it or not, or take it on notice.
No, by all means. I was referring to Director Watson's answer when I put the question to him earlier. What was the difference between the two options we had this evening, the officer's recommendation on the one hand and your alternative motion on the other? Director Watson rattled off several safeguards that were in place in the officer's recommendation that were not covered by your alternative motion. I'm also conscious of the undertakings made by the NSFA to NTAG over the last few days that I think are very sympathetic to the local residents and are very courteous and a wonderful thing that the NSFA did. And I think that's an opportunity to move forward. As Councillor Ward said, look, their issues remain, no doubt about it. But I think the constructive approach by both sides is something that we should be very pleased about. And there are safeguards that we have in a constructive relationship going forward that there is not in the alternative motion that you put up earlier.
So can he identify some of the safeguards or undertaking? Well,
the NSFA has said that there will be no professional games that it will convene at the NTRA. It has said that there will be the only games involving Northern Tigers will be Sorry, the only games at that level will be those of which it's involved. This, of course, NSFA speaking for its own
I'm
organisation.
really struggling to find any relevance, whether this has any relation to whether we should rescind the motion. So
I'm very happy to sit down. I was simply answering what Councillor Spencer asked.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Nye.
Thank you. Just question to Councillor Spencer again. Are there words that we have here where if the rescission is successful, we instead propose such and such? What are there going to be words here, or are we leaving it as blank?
Yes, there will be.
Okay, so my question then to the Mayor is, can you please give Councillor Spencer the opportunity to put those words up on the screen now so that we have something to vote on?
That would actually have to be another urgency motion.
Another urgency motion.
Correct.
We don't really want to go through this, do we? Okay, anyway, I'll do it this way then. I'm going to speak against the rescission, even though, does that technically mean the rescission is pulled if I speak against it?
No, you're quite entitled to,
Okay, yeah,
to vote
sure.
whichever way
Look,
you wish.
I'm okay with the proposal. The reason why I voted against it previously, before our 5-minute break, was I genuinely believed that there was an opportunity for us to get a better outcome for our residents through dialogue, through improvements to traffic, through potentially even getting a bit more additional funding from the state government. I'm disappointed that we didn't have the opportunity to discuss that, and normally when we do a rescission motion, we have the opportunity to think about things and discuss with each other. I was not of the view that if we had rescinded, all opportunities would be lost. I'm pretty confident that we would have quite a good chance that we could continue the discussion at the extraordinary meeting of council called on Monday, if one were to be called, or in March even. But having said that, we are where we are now. I'm generally supportive of the project. I just wish that we had more opportunity to explore some better options, and I was disappointed that I was cut. As such, given that there is no other option here in this rescission motion, we're just rescinding full stop, cut. I'm happy to just say I'm going to vote against the rescission motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nye. Councillor Ward.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Oops. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, may I just make a statement?
Councillor Ward, you've actually already spoken against the rescission motion, so you would have to frame a question.
I just need one clarification, if I may, please. We've talked about this GB that's come to us today is all about our heads of agreement, and we've talked so much
Councillor
about
Ward,
it
unfortunately, you have
here.
spoken to it, and you have to ask a question. I appreciate where you're coming from.
I just don't understand. We had so much discussion. I just don't understand how we got here, and we're doing this whole thing again. I want to be able to understand Councillor Spencer a little bit better. I thought we did talk about community engagement, and that was the reason why I voted with it, because I thought we did the sufficient thing already.
Okay.
Anyways.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. There being no further discussion, again, the motion before you is a rescission motion, basically to cancel out what was passed not that long ago. So if you're in favour of cancelling out what was passed not long ago, therefore you would be voting in favour of the rescission. All those in favour of the rescission. That is Councillors Spencer, Kay and Greg Taylor. Those against being Councillors Alec Taylor, Wheatley, Smith, Lennon, Nye, Pettit, Ward. That rescission is lost. Councillors and staff, the only item on the agenda which is Councillor Nye's notice of motion, which is in regards to the General Manager's Performance Agreement practices. We will have to move into confidential, and staff and the gallery will have to vacate the council chambers.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Is it possible at this stage to move this motion without debate?
You certainly can move it without
But
debate.
I'm not the mover.
Councillor Nye, if you would care to move it as is.
Sure, let's move it as is.
That's fine, then we don't have to move into confidential. That is moved by Councillor Nye, seconded by Councillor Spencer. All those, you wish to withdraw it, Councillor Smith. Is there any specific questions that would require confidential?
Look, my questions are really around, given that the notice of motion is actually...
No, I'm sort of asking him if the question is actually going to relate to something confidential.
Given the matter that it's literally restricting the councillors that get the opportunity to be involved in the process and set the parameters, I believe that it is in the council's interest to have all councillors there for it, because it's going to come back to council in any case.
So in that situation, you would be basically moving an amendment?
Yeah, I'll move an amendment, but I just thought you were just questioning what the issue is with it.
That's okay. So...
So I'll move an amendment for everything to be kept as it is currently.
No. Councillor Smith.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. What is as it is?
Okay.
We're going to go in confidential.
Yeah.
Now we're in confidential.
Okay. Seek a motion that we go into confidential. Moved Councillor Smith, seconded Councillor Wheatley. All those in favour?
Aye.
That is unanimous. No, not now. We don't know. Shut up.